ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ、ナマンダーツ。願長生願非死無浄土志願不満足政府上昇学我を無量行不意大摂取不採小貧具生部上昇学我至上仏道妙正長寺法苦境未消門政府上昇学利欲人少年上映四本行真無無浄土一生天人師人力現代公無生無才道少女三苦妙交際集約難回避知縁縁滅死根門案閉塞小悪道自然全宗門高僧上満足利用老寺法日願主時期天候恩不言一種解放像おせく独法上大集中説法四識供養一切仏具足修徳本願念心上満徳一三愛用女文無下知自達未不詳願学営力投資最小損志願若国家大戦の感動国書天人とうち妙見ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ 何にしくどく平等正祭道法菩提心おうじょうあんなこ。Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Please join me in Gassho. The teaching of one's calling should not be considered false. The teaching of many calling should not be considered false. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandaps, 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 Namandaps. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first Sunday service for the month of November. The weather definitely looks like fall. The rain is nonstop this week, and we are now having Thanksgiving in our minds. It is also Indigenous Peoples Month here in the United States, where we all commemorate and acknowledge the people who existed and rightfully inhabited these lands before us and our ancestors who came to this country. Today for our Dharma talk, I would like to talk about how we as people sometimes get caught up in our little differences throughout our lives. These differences usually stem from our own egos. For us as followers of the nembutsu, one of the main acts of ritual that is most associated with us, of course, is nembutsu, or saying the name of Amida Buddha. In other words, Namo Amida Butsu. But here is the question. How many times are we supposed to say it? Are we supposed to say it thousands of times a day? Legend has it that Honen Shonin, Shinran Shonin's teacher, would say the nembutsu about 100,000 times a day. It might have been more. But then there's also a side that says maybe we should only say it once with sincere heart and mind. Well, maybe in the United States, the average temple follower will think maybe it's 3. Maybe we say it 3 times. Because usually in the United States, or in the BCA, the minister will prompt the congregation to chant nembutsu. I say Namo Amida Butsu, and you say Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. However, I think now Namo Amida Butsu is done 3 times, and then it's followed by a stream of Namandaps, 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 Namandaps. Believe it or not, back in Shinran's time, this was a matter of debate. There were some of Shinran's followers and Honen's followers who would say that the nembutsu should be chanted as many times as possible, whether you're sleeping or walking or doing something else, and when you're not talking about something, you should be saying it. nembutsu all the time. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So in our daily lives, perhaps when we're driving our cars, we should say the nembutsu. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. That would be that might be distracting though, but maybe we should still say the nembutsu. There was another faction that said that we should find that one moment of pure shinjin or true awakening. And then when that moment hits us, when we have this true aha or understanding moment where we fully accept the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha, that one thought moment, that one moment, then that's when the nembutsu should be uttered. Then we are assured birth in the Pure Land. To say it after that or to continue saying it would just be adding unnecessary topping. That's it. And both sides would often argue and possibly get into some fights over this. So I recall during my time in Japan when we were celebrating Shinran Shonin's passing into the Pure Land or birth into the Pure Land, Goshoki Hoonko. And during one of these times at Nishihonganji, there was an older gentleman who would say the nembutsu really loudly. And I should mention that this gentleman also was present at many of the other services that I attended or that I helped serve. And I would always be able to hear him. And he had this very distinctive namandaps, 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 almost shouting it. At one point during one of the services at Goshoki Hoonko, one of the other members of the congregation stood up and approached this gentleman and explained that he was disrupting the service and that he should be quiet. He shouldn't say the nembutsu so loudly. And then the loud chanter just said, "Hai, arigato, namandaps, namandaps." And then the two would still continue to argue. And they were going at it. And finally, I think the man who stood up to say, "Hey, your chanting is too loudly," gave up and walked away. Now, while this debate may not have happened yet in the United States, and I don't see this debate or this debate happening anytime soon, I believe that we as people are also prone to this kind of behavior or thinking. To best illustrate my point, I remember a story that was read to me as a child. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Seuss and have enjoyed some of his stories as young children. You probably remember stories like The Cat in the Hat or The Lorax. While it is true that there is a debate about whether or not we should continue to read Dr. Seuss to our children because of the racist drawings that he did during World War II that depicted images of Japanese people in very, very terrible lights, I would like to share this one story of his that had an effect on me as a child. This story is called The Butter Battle Book. Try saying that 10 times fast. The Butter Battle Book. How many of you have read this story? I will not read this book in its entirety on this Dharma talk, but I highly suggest at some point you read it when you are able to. For those of you who have not read it yet, be prepared as there are major spoilers ahead. So if you want to read the book before you continue this Dharma talk, pause the video and read it, then come back. Okay, did you pause the video? Are you all ready? Did you all read it? Are you okay with spoilers? All right, we're proceeding. In this story, there are two societies that are divided by a wall. On one side of the wall, you have the Yuks. On the other, you have the Zooks. The Yuks and the Zooks' main source of food is bread and butter. What separates the two cultures is that the Yuks eat their bread with the butter side up, while the Zooks eat their bread with the butter side down. While this difference might seem arbitrary or random to you or me, it matters so much to the Yuks and the Zooks. In fact, it matters so much that both sides will often get into fights over whose side eats the bread and butter correctly. The two main characters of this story eventually keep trying to one-up another with fighting each other and bringing bigger weapons to their fights, until they finally come to the end of the story, where they stand on top of the wall and they have a stalemate with equally destructive bombs that could shatter both sides. Then guess what? The story ends right there. Dr. Seuss did not write a winner for this story. The story is told from the Ukes' perspective, so you'd think that they would have been the ones to win in the end. However, a deeper message was given to us as children by Dr. Seuss, as in this particular case, there really isn't a winner. Or more importantly, there really isn't a good side or a bad side. The same is true then with the debate that happened all those years ago when the followers of the nembutsu argued about what the correct amount of times to say Namo Amida Butsu was. Shinran stated from the quote above that the idea of the once calling should not be seen as incorrect, but also stated that the idea of many calling, so saying the nembutsu once with sincere heart, should not be seen incorrect, and then saying nembutsu many times should also not be seen as incorrect. For him, one part could not really exist without the other. When he was probably asked which one was right, his response was most likely, just say the nembutsu. For some of us listening to this, we may think, well, that's not really our problem. Well, that happened hundreds of years ago. Why does it matter now? But as modern people today, we live with this kind of ego-centered mindset every single day. We all think most of the time that we are right about most things. I am included in this. Now that we have Facebook and Twitter, I think this problem has gotten even worse. And once again, I am just as guilty as I have my own Facebook. When I see something I deem to be bad or false, I will post about it with my opinion and say how right I am. We often see this as well when we try to work with a team of people. We sometimes get into arguments over the best way to set something up, to take something down, how best to arrange something. When someone doesn't agree with us, we get mad, and we begin to regret working with that person. This is exactly what bonno, or blind passions, looks like. Can't we just be grateful that there is a team of people who are able to come together and help with big events? Or can we be grateful that we are able to all be with each other at the temple and be grateful that this teaching is meant just for us? Well, maybe the answer to this question is yes and no. I think there will always be times when we as people make a mistake or get caught up in our own egos and possibly impose them on each other. However, as we continue to recognize that these times and realize that these moments of weakness comes from our own ego, then we can learn to better let go of that ego-centered notion that my way is the only way. As we continue moving forward with our lives and as we continue to ward through the pandemic, I ask us all, including myself, to reflect on how lucky we are that we have people in our lives who care about similar principles and want to come together to continue the sharing of the Dharma. As we begin to come together, or as we start to have more in-person events again, and family functions, whether in the office, the gym, the home, the dojo, or even the temple, differences of opinion may start to seep through again. We may start to impose our ego-centered minds on each other. However, let us take care to be sure that we treat each other with love and respect and continue to reflect with a grateful mind on the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. For Amida Buddha, the Dharma, accepts us just as we are flawed. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandaps, 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 namandaps.